Welcome to Tea with Tori. I'm your host, Tori, and today the tea is hot. Alrighty. What's up, spillers? Welcome to a new episode of Tea with Tori podcast. I'm your host, Tori, and today I have a very special guest. I have Natalie. Please let the people know who you are and what you do.
My name is Natalie, and I'm an acupuncturist, herbalist, and Chinese medicine doctor. And my focus is women's health, particularly, so that's why I'm here. I'm now working with over 50 women per week and really focusing on the mindset work. So what I see mostly in my office is a combination of mind and body. And I've developed a real firm belief that for women particularly, our minds are extremely powerful in the positive and the negative. Mm-hmm. And so what I see in the office is women show up with a variety of physical issues, from gynecological problems, which is super common, fertility issues, pain, chronic pain, cancer, heart disease, anxiety, depression, the gamut of what we call of issues. But what I've seen over, throughout my practice is that there's one core issue for women particularly, and I think that gives rise to almost everything, and that's what I work on, and it's really about self-worth and belief in oneself and positive thinking about oneself and one's capacity. And so that's what I work on, like, as a core foundation in my practice, and I'm developing that more and more. And how do I help women believe in themselves, both physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually? And there's a long history of why women have been programmed to not believe in themselves and why that's been, the paradigm for so long. We can get more into that. So that's my work. I trained a lot of training. I got my bachelor's in philosophy. I lived at an ashram in India in my 20s. I lived at an ashram for 5 years, and that was like full nun life.
Full nun life.
Yeah, we woke up every day at 4 a.m. I had, the school was extremely disciplined. Like, you weren't allowed to leave the campus. It was a 3-year program that I did studying Vedic philosophy. Women were completely covered. So it was pretty cult-like, I would say, for sure. Like, everyone wore a uniform, and so the women completely covered, no makeup, hair always had to be back, definitely no jewelry. And it was all about the search for self. And so I moved there when I was 21, when I was really struggling with my own mind. And that's where I found Ayurveda and Eastern medicine and the journey into knowing self. And it's interesting because Vedanta, the philosophy I studied, was never taught to women. It was really? Actually banned traditionally from teaching women spiritual philosophy. So my teacher, he was one of the first teachers to open this philosophy to women. My school was mixed. Most of the ashrams only allow men. So yeah, long story short, then I moved back to the States, got my master's in Chinese medicine, now finishing my doctorate in women's health and reproductive medicine. That's me. Yeah.
So what particularly what was the first thing that drew you to wanting to kind of search for something outside of Western medicine? Because I feel like that's the first thing people do is I'm going to go to the doctor, I'm going to go to the psychologist, I'm going to go to the therapist, they're going to figure it out for me, I'm going to take something, and then my life's going to be better.
Yeah, it was, it started when I was in my teenage years. I had very irregular periods, and I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had weight issues, I had acne, I had all the classic of PCOS. I'm sure if women are listening to this, it's very common. I also had anxiety and depression. I was diagnosed bipolar when I was 17 with 10 minutes of this
someone
dude.
Talking to you.
Yeah, and he was like, here's lithium. And I was like, what the fuck? I just couldn't. I didn't understand. I didn't have any knowledge of an alternative way. I was raised very, very conventional. My parents are extremely conservative. Don't do Eastern anything. So I remember, so I was diagnosed with PCOS. I was given a prescription for bipolar. I was given hormones for my PCOS. And I remember sitting outside of the gynecologist's office and I was crying. And I was like, I think I was 17 or 18. And I just I felt so alienated and confused. And I didn't know, like, I knew that wasn't the path for me. I knew that my issues were deeper than that, and that what the solution was not that. I didn't know what the other path was because I just had never had any exposure. And then long story, went to India, and that's when I found Ayurvedic medicine through a woman herbalist, and I started working with her once a week and started to learn about plant medicine. And then I started using it for my PCOS. I saw an acupuncturist. He's amazing. I met him in India. He's from Tibet, and worked with him in his practice. And I just got exposed to like this whole world of Eastern medicine, and particularly the Ayurvedic physician I was working with. Like she introduced me to just a new way of looking at the body through plant medicine, through like working with herbs. And then I lost like a ton of weight. My acne cleared. My PCOS basically went away. Like my ultrasound was completely clear after 2 years.
Wow.
When I went back to that same gynecologist 3 years later, when I came back from India, he looked at I did like a blood panel and an ultrasound, and he was like shocked, like completely shocked. And he was like, your lab work and your ultrasound, it's like a serial killer becoming Mother Teresa. That's how like radically transformed it was.
That's insane.
Yeah, with no medication, nothing. And mentally, like I stabilized completely. And it was all through, I mean, I would say Eastern medicine, so acupuncture and Ayurveda. I trained in Ayurveda as well, but also spiritual practice. And that's really something that I am just a huge advocate of, because I was reading about it this morning that like our mindset is so key to our physical health. So at that same time I found Eastern medicine, I also found ways to understand my own mind. And that is really fundamental. And then started working out and all the other things. So it's a combination, but it was through my time in India that I got exposed. Yeah. And then like healed myself. Basically now I have regular periods, like no issues. I haven't been to the doctor in God knows how long.
So were you ever on conventional birth control?
No, I never took birth control. I was prescribed it. And then, but birth control is complicated. I also was married to someone with a vasectomy. And so I never, that's a whole other story, but
I'm like, that was a...
Yeah. So like we got together when I was early 20s up until recently. So I never had to on the sex side, but hormonally, no. Like I was prescribed it hormonally and I never took it. Yeah. But birth control is complicated because you also don't want, as we're dealing with now, unwanted pregnancies, problematic. So it's a complex issue in the women's health world.
I think 100% it is, because I feel like the discussion on women's health, first of all, should be had by women.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the most jarring thing to me about where it is with society in the world right now, is you just see these like panels of men making all these decisions about women and women's bodies, and men already claim to not really understand women. So I don't understand why they would think that they could understand our bodies that we already don't really understand and we're figuring out.
Well, that's the history of Western gynecology. So, like, traditionally, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a Western physician. She's young. She's in her mid-20s, so she's super open-minded. And, she herself is like, I would never go to a Western doctor, and she's a Western doctor.
Yeah.
But we were talking, and what's the history of modern gynecology? So traditionally, women were treated by women healers, and women were treated by women until, I think this was like turn of the 20th century. in Europe, it became illegal for women to practice herbal medicine. They made medicine require a license, as we have now, which there's a reason for that, but it was a certain kind of license, a conventional medical license, and it was completely created by men. And so the system of women's health was like cut, clear, eliminate. Like if you think of the word for hysterectomy, or the Latin root for the uterus is synonymous with hysterical.
Yeah.
So women were treated by men as crazy, and uteruses were being cut out left and right. And it's just a long history of men controlling women's bodies through medicine. But it was never...
That was never the purpose.
Yeah, the purpose, I think, in a lot of ways was how do we control women's minds and bodies? I don't know how much intention was in that, but prior to the medicalization of women's bodies through what we now know as modern gynecology, women healers and plant medicine and, using herbs, that was the norm. That's how women gave birth. Midwives and doulas, and that's how we cared for each other in community. And it's just, we've obviously gone so
far from that.
Yeah. I mean, we're coming back, I think, these kinds of conversations. But yeah. And women of color, that's a whole other issue that has been horrific.
Especially in medicine.
Yeah, especially in medicine.
It's
I was speaking to a patient of mine yesterday. She's a nurse. She's a neuro nurse at UCLA, African American woman, and she's explaining how she's treated by her doctors. And it's basically you're treated like a number and prescribe, that's your option. And there's just no humanity in it.
There's not at all, but also what they're trying to get you to take is a chemically made drug, essentially, that you're meant to get addicted to and take forever.
Yeah.
I've never understood. I understand antibiotics, take this for 14 days to help your body. Take this for that. But even that, I have taken so few antibiotics in my life. My mom's super holistic. She had 3 kids, midwife, all natural childbirth, breastfed us, so no good. Formula. So all natural raising. You're sick, here's some chamomile tea in a soup. So I never really took antibiotics until it was I was getting a surgery and I literally needed to take antibiotics to not just a common cold. And I feel it's become this situation in society today where it's how do I fix this the fastest I can fix it? And that's usually how you wind up sick for longer, or you wind up hurting yourself in some other way that you don't even realize in this moment until later. So it's just this instant gratification lifestyle that everyone's kind of living, and it's even gone into medicine, because of course no one wants to feel sick for a week, but you also have to think about the fact that it might not just be your body that's sick. It might be your body telling you whoa, slow down, you're doing too much, and wanting you to take a break, and you just masking the symptoms with some type of over-the-counter drug, or not even over-the-counter drug, is just going to prolong that your body is needing, other than just listening to it.
And that, this is a bigger conversation about what your soul is needing.
Exactly.
The body often is a mechanism through which problems are brought to the surface. And so it's it's an opportunity. And this is a huge part of my learning. Every health problem is an opportunity to look at self and re-examine, where am I in balance? This is Chinese medicine. It's all about balance. Where am I in balance? Where am I out of balance? What's going on? And it's like a sign or red flag that something's up and that needs to be looked at. So you're totally right. Then if you use a pill to cover it up, you'll never look at the deeper cause. And that's a huge part of how our society keeps us all asleep. Because it's no, don't look at the deeper cause.
Literally, just take this.
Yeah, just take it. This is if you look at oxycodone, and I know last time we spoke about Adderall, these drugs, the whole opiate crisis and the current Adderall crisis, which Adderall is a secondary crisis. It's almost in line with the opiate epidemic in terms of people being addicted now.
It's given to kids
speed.
from like childhood, like you're 10 and you're being given meth essentially
Yeah.
to focus and calm down in school.
Yeah. So it's the same issue of like, and the same issue with birth control being given to every woman with a menstrual issue. It's like, no, don't look at, you know, your lifestyle. Don't look at your sleep. Don't look at your relationships. Don't look at your mindset. Don't look at your spiritual growth. Don't look at your connection to other women. Like, that's a huge thing.
Yep.
Just take this and stay asleep and stay suffering.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's a huge, when you really open this, and this is kind of where I am now, like every day, I study a lot. Like, it's a big part of my practice, personal practice. And just like, oh my God, like, what are we doing to each other? But these conversations are really important because we are in a renaissance. I think COVID, on the bright side, is waking people up.
Oh, 100%. I feel like people had nothing to do but to stay home and like learn and research things and figure things out and talk to people. And why is this happening? And scared to go into the doctor because everyone's sick. So figuring things out like, oh, I can actually just like rest and drink some tea. And
my body has healing capacities on its own.
So many people, like, I feel like they don't even realize how strong their body is and how able it is to heal themselves. And every time that you take a shortcut, you rob your body of that chance to build up its immune system. And I just remember like being a kid and my mom would just let me and my siblings play like crazy, and my grandparents would be like, they're gonna get sick, blah blah blah. My mom's like, yeah, their kids are supposed to get sick. They get sick now so that they don't get sick later. Like, I had the chicken pox, like I did it all.
Your parents are evolved.
My grandfather is still actually a chiropractor, so it started way back with that, and his parents were Russian, so they were very holistic, like heal yourself type thing.
That's awesome.
So it very much got passed down. And my dad, his side of the family, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, people dying young, people dying of heart attacks. So my mom, once she broke it down to him, he was just like, live longer, live healthier. 100%. My parents are both vegans now. They do yoga every day. Like, my dad went to the doctor and they told him he had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, wanted to prescribe him things. And he was like, no, give me 6 months. I'm going to come back in 6 months. If you still see that everything's high, then I'll take what you're telling me to. Went vegan, started like working out more, started taking like actual medicine, which is what I call like fish oil and spirulina and all the things that you're supposed to take, burdock root, like take those things that give you all the benefits that the other things that are made by the pharmaceutical companies are just masking. Like, heal the things, don't just like ignore them. And that's the crazy thing about pharmaceuticals to me, is like literally their purpose is to make you ignore the problem. And that's not to say like there are not situations where they're needed. There are definitely situations where these things are needed. However, there are situations where they're super not, and we have them there too.
Yeah, and it's more of like scale and intention. So it's like a huge part of it is how pharmaceuticals have been scaled. And so they're very easily multiplied for a lot of financial, I mean, we all know the huge amount of money involved in pharmaceuticals. And so, and then it becomes very needed. And then like, if you just look at the whole thing of how it works, like you need all these clinical trials, which are expensive. You need manufacturing, which is expensive. So it's to the benefit of the pharmaceutical companies to have massive scale campaigns with every physician in the country or the world, because it's more money in their pocket. So they have no incentive to not prescribe. To not push it. And it's interesting because from like a mental perspective, they don't even create the neural networks to question the validity of these drugs. And like, if you look at doctors of previous generations, they certainly never questioned. That was the indoctrination of it all. So what we're going through now, where now supplements and herbs and nutrition, because of the fashion of it, I would say, like, it's becoming popular, which is good. I mean, there's always layers, but there's a lot of money now in supplements. There's a lot of money now in herbs. And so it's creating this new like flow against the mainstream. And so I think eventually medicine is going to become integrative. Like I had a physician from UCLA shadow me in the acupuncture clinic because she's like, it's crazy. Like our medicine isn't helping people. And it's like, I can't imagine also pushing something that doesn't actually help somebody.
Literally.
Yeah. Like, what is your day like? Like,
seriously though,
it's
how do you like look someone in the face? Because you did acupuncture for me, and it's very much like you completely believe in what you're saying, and I can't imagine like knowing something doesn't work and still giving it to someone like maybe it'll work for you.
Yeah, and also knowing that there's so much like
negative.
all the deeper stuff to it. So it's hard because doctors, I think, genuinely are good people. Like they want to help people, but that current system makes it very difficult. So I think our work, like that's why these conversations are really key, because the more people that seek alternative care, the more demand there is on the system. Like if patients ask the doctors for alternative care, doctors then have to like their service, they're in service of the patient. It's when patients are asleep, which by patients, the public, that's when medicine gets bad, things get bad. So it's really right now our work as women, especially like educating ourselves. That's the biggest thing. Like, I mean, I was just in a class last week on like the cervix and the vulva and like orgasms and all these things about women's bodies. And I was like, I've been studying women's health for years. I don't even know this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, most women have no idea like where their cervix is.
Yeah.
And like what it does. And so this is becoming, I think, more and more my mission is like education. Like, what is your uterus? What is a period? What happens? Yeah. Like, what is an ovary? Like, what happens in your ovaries? What are the hormones involved? What happens in your monthly cycle? Like the basic things. Because if you don't know that, then you're like, oh, I have cramps. I have fibroids. Okay, the doctor says give me birth control, then they'll take it.
Literally. And then you're 30 and you can't have babies with your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously. It's a whole cycle. And then where do you go? IVF.
Yep.
15 grand later. There's so much money. Like, yeah.
There's so much money that gets made off of women's bodies that don't go to women.
Exactly.
That's the thing that like really gets me about it.
It's funny on that note with the IVF birth control. I was talking to somebody yesterday. She's like, my gynecologist she's 30 trying to get pregnant and getting off birth control. She's like, for my entire 20s, they like told me that the only option for preventing pregnancy is to be on birth control. Mm-hmm. And now I'm 30 and I want to get pregnant. And suddenly she tells me that I can only get pregnant in the window of ovulation. Mm-hmm. But like, why didn't she tell me that 10 years ago when I was like, it's like you spend an entire decade trying not to get pregnant by taking this. And then you're trying to get pregnant and you realize that it's actually within only this
very small amount of time.
Yeah. And if you don't know that, it's like, but then they tell you that when you're trying to get pregnant and it's like, what? Why didn't
I feel like it really comes from the fact that like when you have an irregular period or when you're first getting your period, it's not really the most regular. So you don't really know when your window of ovulation is. You haven't really regulated yet. So a lot of girls will be like, I don't even know when my last period is. And it's like a lot of them then will forget to even take the pill. So like forget tracking. I think it was definitely a thing that happened to be able to kind of control women's bodies in the way of like, we don't want people to get abortions. So let's give them something before it even gets to that point.
Yeah. Well, that's the big issue. And the reason why you like really well-meaning doctors and nurse practitioners with the best of intentions give birth control and IUDs, because an unwanted pregnancy is way worse for the woman than just being on birth control and an IUD. Absolutely. Like that is true. And I think when we talk about birth control, it's really important to address, you know, it's important to prevent unwanted pregnancies. That's very important for women's health. My problem with birth control is more when it's used for hormonal reasons. Mm-hmm. That becomes an issue where we don't access the well of medicine in nature.
Like, I have acne, let me go on birth control.
Yeah, I have, you know, endometriosis. Okay, birth control. And it's not that it can't help. Like, it can help with endo, but there's just other options, you know?
That no one really, like, talks about.
Yeah, so birth control is multifaceted. Like, if you're trying, you know, if you're 22 and you're having tons of sex and you don't want to get pregnant, probably good to take birth control. Like, yeah. I would recommend that.
You should do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and, you know, if you're making not much money and you don't want to have a kid, take birth control. Like, it's fine. It's good. But if you're, what I mostly see, you know, is people, especially like single women who aren't having sex in a like promiscuous way or in a stable relationship, who may even want to have a child, or just kind of on the fence, they're taking birth control for their endometriosis, for their polycystic ovarian syndrome, for their acne, for their weight. Like, it becomes this catch-all thing. That paradigm, I think, is ready for some critical thinking. Yeah, because there's so many options and women, I think, deserve to realize that, like, you should know what your options are.
Yeah.
And that goes into, I don't know how deep we want to go, but thyroid disease is another big one. Like, a lot of women suffer with Hashimoto's and hypoactive thyroid or hyperthyroid, and they go to the doctor and immediately you're given like a thyroid pill that you're going to have to take for the rest of your life.
That's a big pill too.
Yeah, like, I mean, most women who you talk to who are over the age of 50 are on Synthroid. And once you get on Synthroid or levothyroxine or one of these thyroid hormones, you're on that for the rest of your life, because then your thyroid can't produce its own hormones. There's so many other options. And it was very interesting. I had a patient, she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. She was hypothyroid. Went to her doctor. They were like, you have to take, I think she was 28, so pretty young. And her mom had just died, like going through all kinds of stuff.
Emotional things.
Like deep suffering, all kinds of stuff. The doctor was like, you just have to take this in a 10-minute, you know, whatever meeting.
Breakdown.
Yeah. And then, so she came to me, I started working with her. We worked together for probably a year, and we did like supplements, and I monitored her blood work. We did acupuncture, cupping, all kinds of things, coaching, all of it. And her thyroid issue resolved. It became manageable. And of course, like a lot of supplements, it's not, you know, magic. But then she went to her doctor and she was like, why didn't you tell me that there was another option? Like, why didn't you tell me to cut out gluten? Like, why didn't you mention it? And her doctor was like, well, and it's not that her doctor didn't know. Her doctor was like, well, most patients just aren't interested. So I just don't, you know. And I was like, that's the issue. That
most people like, just give me something to fix it.
Yeah. So it's really like, and this is the issue of taking personal responsibility. Like, it's up to us. We have to advocate for ourselves, or find someone to advocate for you, because the system is just going to be lowest common denominator. Where's the money?
Yeah.
That's always going to be the case.
That's what I always think is like, who's benefiting off of this?
Yeah.
And why would they do anything else besides what they're benefiting off of if they're continuing to benefit off of it?
Yeah, they have no incentive. It's all dollars. It's all dollars.
No, and I think that's the most scary thing about like weed and mushrooms and like all these. I'm such an advocate for earth drugs. I don't believe anything should be made in a lab. I don't think you should be putting things that are not natural in your body. And I've like even incorporated that more into food. And I did a vegan week, and like I was like, I just want to see what's going to happen, like how my body's going to feel. And at the end I was
Did you grow up vegan?
I grew up for the first 2 years of my life. I was vegetarian. My mom was vegetarian pretty much her whole life. And then as she started getting pregnant with my brother and my sister, she started craving meat. So it just, she cooks. So it naturally became in the household. Then when I was about 16, I wanted to do this like cleanse because we were going on a cruise. And I was like, I'm just going to cut out all meat, but I'm still going to eat fish. I'm going to be pescatarian. So I was pescatarian for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I ate bacon and it was like all downhill from there. So now I'm like kind of getting back to it. But like I knew I was at the point where I was craving meat, and there's going to be a point where I don't crave it again. And like while my body is just craving this for whatever reason, like I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah. And like with me, I mean, I've been vegan like 15 or 16 years.
Like my body would freak out.
Well, it's weird. Like, I think every body is different, and I'm mostly vegan actually for like my spiritual practice. And I was having a conversation with a friend about this yesterday. He was like, plants feel. And I'm like, they do. But like, I can cut, a leaf. I'm not going to go kill a cow.
Cat. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I think different bodies, especially women's bodies, a lot of women's bodies need meat. And that's absolutely part of the medicine of food. It's just, again, like, where does it come from? Where are you sourcing your meat? What's the energy behind the killing? Like, all these things. There's no hard and fast with that. So.
With diet at all. I feel like
Yeah.
you eat all day. Like there's no wrong or right answer. There's just like, when you have the power, make the right choice.
Yeah, and as far as processing, that's the
killer.
Yeah, it's like if you're predominantly plant-based and eating good quality meats, like
You're going to be fine.
you're going to be fine. Yeah, it's more like packaged food, sugar, all those things that obviously we know like are the killers.
100%. It's like, it's not you getting your organic red meat and making burgers for your family. It's getting
that's not
them
the
in
issue.
and out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's stopping by McDonald's on the way home. That's
With,
even
like,
if you're vegetarian and like not eating like I don't eat the burgers. I just get fries and whatever. Like no.
Yeah, no. It's eating like food from the earth and medicine from the earth. And you mentioned plant medicine, like in terms of shrooms and cannabis, and those things I think are really powerful in the mental health sphere. I think particularly there's a lot coming out with the use of psilocybin that I've been researching and experimenting with myself that I find to be really empowering. And having been someone that has dealt with anxiety and depression and loss and all these things in my own life, and not wanting to go down the road of pharmaceuticals for that, I've never taken an antidepressant. I have found, and this is complex and there's so much work around it, but I've found that working with psilocybin particularly can be very, very helpful for the
100%.
mental health. Yeah.
100%.
And that's new. Like, this is a new renaissance, actually, of consciousness work and what it means to use plant medicine to wake up and ask questions. And there's a lot to be learned and discovered in that realm.
I feel like it's kind of like a double-edged sword right now, where you either have like, I'm doing self-work and I'm completely sober, or like I'm doing self-work and I'm like shrooming and doing ayahuasca
exactly.
and like smoking weed, and like there's really, I feel like there's a lot of judgment that comes from each side about the other side of like, oh, I could never like get in touch with myself the way I have on shrooms, like the way like sober, like I could never do that. And people that are doing it, like I could never meditate this way if I was like being clouded by drugs like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just like to each his own, and there's certain situations for each of the different ways to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the other side. I used to be like so sober, so judgmental. I grew up, my mom had drug problems. And so I was like so judgmental. Like when my friends were doing shrooms, I was like, yeah. And after being in the ashram, like I was sober. I couldn't even take a drink. Like I was just so sober. And then I went through last year a divorce, and it was, I don't like the word divorce. we consciously uncoupled. And that kind of threw me into a lot of deep inner work. And I was completely sober and doing all of the deep work and the meditation, journaling, and we were in like uncoupling therapy. Like it was a whole thing. And then my brother actually, he introduced me to microdosing. This was in December, so kind of recently. And I was like, okay, I think I can handle this. I was like, I think this is like, I've done enough inner work. I was so judgmental of it all. I'm like, no, I can do this. So I tried it and I started experimenting more, and it really opened my mind to that whole world. And I think it's really important to realize that you have to be doing, like, no drug, whether it's a pharmaceutical or a plant medicine, can do the work for you.
No.
It's what is facilitated. And that's true on both sides of the spectrum.
100%. Like you can definitely become a lazy oaf that sits at home and smokes weed all day and is doing like nothing beneficial for your self-work. You can become someone that shrooms only when you go to EDC festivals and when you're raving and getting drunk too, like, or you can take a heroic dose and sit in the woods and set an intention and journal and really be introspective. I'm so creative when I smoke weed. Like literally, I'm someone that they diagnosed me with ADD when I was younger and my parents never medicated me. And then when I was older, they adult diagnosed me when they could just talk to me directly with ADD, with adult ADD. And they were like, you've never been medicated. That's why all these things are happening in your life, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is going wrong and you can't do this. And I'm like, well, I guess, like, clearly I couldn't even do it without it if I got diagnosed twice in my life. So then I started taking Adderall and I was just like, whoa, I do not feel like myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't be creative at all. Like the way that my brain kind of wanders and I am creative is because of my ADD. Like I literally jump to multiple things and like create stories in my head. And that's part of where my creativity comes from and like where my essentially like my self is and like who I identify as. So it's so terrifying to me that like 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, like before they even have the ability to be like, no, or I feel different and this feels weird. Like I don't feel like myself. And parents are just like, this is what you need to take. Like that's makes me so sad for them that like they have to go through this like loss of self. And it's all because someone didn't want to figure out that, well, maybe we need to do something to entertain this child. Like literally my parents were like, we're not medicating her, figure it out. Well, she seems to get really like, she loses focus when things are too easy for her. All right, put her in harder classes. Make her focus.
Yeah.
Like
it's a muscle. Like the brain is a muscle. Like you actually have to train the capacity to think and focus. And it's hard and it takes work and it takes discipline. And it's much easier. I also was prescribed Adderall and then got like super addicted in my teen years, which contributed.
That happens to so many people.
Yeah,
and then you're emaciated because it kills your
and
appetite.
then you're anorexic and then
you're anorexic and you're crazy. And it like, I feel like it cuts off your emotions too. Like
God.
it's weird. Like it literally just like numbs you and makes you a robot that can just work really hard, which is like exactly what like they want is you to be shut off from your feelings and work like iRobot. And that's like the scariest thing to me is like humans acting without feeling.
Yeah. Oh my God. I remember when I was totally addicted to Adderall up until I basically faked an ADD diagnosis to get Adderall.
So many people do. It's
Yeah.
so easy to do.
It's so easy. Like I wanted Adderall. So I don't know how old I was, like teens. I went to the doctor and like just said everything
that you found online.
Yeah, exactly. Got Adderall, got super addicted like crazy. Ended up deciding in my sophomore year at college that I needed to get off of it because I felt like a psychopath. Like I couldn't communicate with anybody normally.
Yep.
Like my emotions with men, oh my God, like I couldn't like because there were so many emotions and fears around guys at that age, like, and then add Adderall to the mix.
You're just like word vomiting.
Yeah,
everywhere.
I just like my relationships with men were like horrible, and I was like, man, and I was afraid also that I couldn't do work without it, and so I just and that's the biggest thing where you yourself feel Like, I can't be creative. I can't be worthwhile as a person without this drug. My worth is dependent. Like, my productivity, my creativity is dependent. Bad. So I ended up taking 2 years off of I dropped out of college. I was like kind of forced out by like the nervous breakdown thing, and because of getting off Adderall and the fears of that.
Yeah, it takes away your self-worth when you're told that this thing is something that you need every day to make you a functioning person in society.
Yeah.
Like, okay, take it
Something's
away.
Something's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Without this is the thing that makes you normal, that makes you like
Yeah.
everyone else, that will make you be able to function in society the way that you're supposed to.
Right. And because who you are is too much. Who you are, you can't fit in. Yeah, like, so then I left college, moved to Thailand. That was actually, I guess, the beginning of the Eastern journey.
Why Thailand?
I don't know. Like, I think I wanted to work on a farm. So I joined this thing called Worldwide Organic Farms, the WWOOFing. And Thailand just has a lot of farms that, like, Westerners can go to. I ended up, through like a long string of events, living there for a year, and I ended up near Myanmar, and it was at the time when the riots were happening in Myanmar, and because of the Buddhist Muslim conflict. I was really young at that time to be exposed to this. It was very interesting, but I ended up living with a family of refugees from Myanmar, Burma, and they were Buddhist. And I lived with them, and I was working for an NGO. We were building homes for refugees coming out of Myanmar. And it was this program called Generation Journey, and we were building homes for children and elders because those are the most vulnerable populations when there's been, at that time, it was a genocide. So I just landed in that job. That's a whole other story, but so while I was working for them, I lived with this Buddhist family who I'm still in touch with her. This is 15 years ago. And it was cool. Before every meal, we did a meditation. The entire life practice was about mindfulness, about your thoughts and your actions and being kind. And here's this family that had nothing, right? Refugees, extremely poor, and they take me in. For a year, I slept in their living room, and it was literally my bed was on the floor, and they let me stay in the living room, and during the day packed my bed up, and we had our we ran this nonprofit. It was an unbelievable experience, but what was so profound, and I grew up in a wealthy Jewish family where it was opposite,
literally.
Literally opposite. It's we have so much. My family is extremely generous, but also just troubled in a lot of ways. But they taught me the value of just self-compassion and self-love and holding space for meditation over food and all of these things coming from LA and Adderall and anorexia and all these toxic things. It was so transformative. And then I ended up going back to college, finishing without Adderall. I did a thesis project on mental illness and sexual violence in women, and that kind of led to a lot of other things. But I realized through that journey of getting off Adderall, thinking that I was useless as a person, to realizing that our culture just doesn't support self-love
at all.
It's you're constantly pathologized, that something's wrong with you, and therefore it necessitates a drug because your state of being, just who you are, isn't good enough.
And it's all in advertising too, and everything they make money off of. You're not pretty enough, here's makeup. You're not buff enough, here's a gym membership.
Constant.
You don't have the nicest car, you don't have the nicest whatever. It's all such external stuff because external stuff costs money, so you have to pay someone, so someone's benefiting from it. They're not going to promote things that make them no money. This is a business. At the end of the day, you open a magazine, you turn on the television, you drive down the street, they're paying for that billboard, they're paying for that ad space. So
and
they're not your headspace. They're not going to pay money to sell you something that you can do yourself.
Yeah.
They're not going to pay money to do an advertisement about meditation. Unless it's for an app that they just put out for meditation.
And this is why meditation's gotten ridiculously popular, even though it's not right for everyone, because it's like, it's so easy to market. It's so freaking popular. My teacher in India is so anti-meditation.
I like movement, like
yes,
meditation.
Like for women, meditation is not good for women
It's
because
stagnant.
it's deadening. You know, we're not even capable. Like our minds are so flowing and all over. Like movement and dance is way more healing. And if you look at women for generations in every culture, they've been dancers and movement and trance and all these things. And then we're like, no, we're supposed to be in because
still.
John Kabat-Zinn created the
Literally though.
Yeah.
And we just and quiet your mind.
Yeah. It's like
My mind is so loud. Yeah. You clearly have never been inside my mind if you think that I could quiet it. I tell people all the time, like, you only get 10% of what's happening up here that comes out of my mouth, because I'll be cracking up by myself because of something I thought, just the way my mind moves.
And that's your beauty, and that's who you are, and that's what makes you worthwhile. And so anything that tells you that needs to be controlled, restricted, that's not going to be your authentic self. And you're not going to feel good. And then eventually you might have ovarian cysts or uterine fibroids because you're suppressing your authentic self, and it will come up. Or breast lumps. Like, these things get held in the body. So that's where, you know, especially when I'm working with young, I'm now starting to work with a lot of kids, which is such a blessing.
Yeah.
It's like amazing because they're open and I can talk to them about these things. Like I had 2 9-year-olds yesterday, brother and a sister. And, you know, we were talking about like, what is love and what is God? And it was like the coolest thing. And they totally got it. Yeah. Like they totally got it. They're like, God is within myself. And I'm like, yes.
Yes. That was always my thing, because my dad grew up Christian. My mom grew up Jewish. So technically by Jewish law, I'm Jewish, but Christians claim me as well. So my parents were very much both ostracized from both their churches for marrying someone outside of their religion.
Oh, interesting.
So they just taught us, like, speak to God yourself. Like, I always grew up like, wait, so I need to go to a house where I sit with a bunch of other people, and then I have to talk to this dude to talk to God for me? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then they want money too. Like, what?
Yeah.
I had this girl that told me a story once where she was like, the moment that I stopped believing in religion, I went to a church and I had like my last like $5. Like, I was down bad, and I was like, please, just like anything you can do to help. And they were like, well, you could make a donation. And she was like, I have no money. Like, I have $5. Like, I'm here for that purpose. And she was like, can we just like pray or something? He's like, you could make a donation.
Wow.
And she's like, I left, and I was just like, I'm done.
No.
That's my thing with like organized religion. I feel like anything has the power. Anything in excess and too much is bad for you. You drink too much water, you're still going to die. Like, you breathe in too much oxygen, you're still going to die. Like, anything can be bad when it's overused. And I think that religion has gotten to that place where people, again, money is controlling a lot of it. And that is what has turned, like, the separation of church and state is not there because, again, money is controlling it. And when you have...
And men.
Men and money,
and
men's relationship with money, and men's relationship with ego, and
and God. Like, men's relationship with God is a real interesting.
It's a complex.
Very complex. It's very complex.
But that's the thing, is like, I would never sit here and try to make laws about men and make assumptions about men and like how they feel
men are
and
going
what
through
they
their
think.
own mental health crisis that needs
Literally
to be talked about. Yeah, that's a whole other.
Majority of people that commit suicide are men, correct?
Yeah.
Me if I'm wrong. They're men because they can't speak about it, and they don't have women. Oh, women can cry and women can be emotional, and the second a man cries, like, it's completely shooed away. That's
You're
a
not
huge
masculine.
Not you're feminine.
Yeah.
All the bullying that comes from your peers of men. If you are ever like that, if you are ever presumed to be anything like a woman, which that makes us women feel real great when the way that you guys insult each other is calling each other us.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean it in a bad way. Really? Because you're using it to describe a negative thing. So, like, you throw like a girl. Was that a compliment?
Yeah.
Because you didn't.
So true.
It didn't sound that way.
I led a women's circle last night, and we did this exercise where we had to go back in our childhood and find an incident where that led to a limiting belief or a negative belief that we carried through up till now. And it was so interesting because most of the stories were like, when I was 8, this boy did this boy. And it's like, what is up with 8-year-old boys like treating women like shit? And it's like, like what? Like they're not like when I mean, see an 8-year-old
think
boy.
about it, it's terrifying, but they're probably emulating their fathers and watching how they treat their mothers. And
that's it. And now it's like, I think we have a huge opportunity and we're sort of pivoting, but like for men's health, it can't be like women's health and men's health can't be siloed. Like we are in this together, and men are struggling so profoundly with their own hearts and their own minds. And there's a renaissance as well with men's groups and like men waking up to their need for vulnerability. And I know so many incredible men in my life who are really doing deep inner child work and like seeking therapy and showing up. And we see it in popular culture and like big superstars talking about therapy. And I think that's so key to women's health and the transformation of consciousness for all of us is like, we can no longer ostracize men as being bad. It's like, where do we create space for compassion around the male journey, which is also, along with the female journey, is completely misunderstood.
100%. I feel like I just wish that like people were as critical on Western medicine as they are on Eastern medicine. Like you tell someone like, I want you to go get adjusted. They're like, oh, they're going to snap my neck. And you're like, no, they're going to realign your spine so you can breathe properly.
Yeah.
And so the blood flow goes to your head properly. Or you're like, oh, you should go get acupuncture. They're going to put needles in me. It doesn't hurt like that. Like, just try it. If I told you like someone's going to cut open your body in a few years, if you don't go do these things, I guarantee you'd be there, but you'd rather criticize and judge something just because you don't know much about it rather than learn about it and potentially save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. The amount of health and nutrition that gets taught to doctors is so minuscule. Yeah. And people will literally come in with all these illnesses, and before even saying change your diet, work out, they literally get given a drug. Yeah.
I mean, that's how the systems function. Hopefully it's changing. I think, it's hard to say when we're in LA because we're in such a box really, but literally. I think I can see a lot of change here, but I can definitely, and I think this message more importantly needs to get out to like the wider community of our country and global. But like, if we look at like, America's interesting because we're all immigrants. Like we all come from,
unless you're a Native American, you did not start here.
Yeah. And the thing is like all Native American culture, all cultures are from the earth. Like we had earth medicine. We lived off the earth. We used plants. That's all of our heritage. Western medicine is relatively new, and look at where we are
with it.
Yeah. Like, look at, like, I mean, yeah, people aren't, penicillin's great. Like, antibiotics can save lives. Like, there's definitely, a lot of growth, of course. And
it just shouldn't be the first choice. It needs to be the last choice.
Yeah. And how we live our lives, how we raise our children. Like, your parents are an excellent example. Like, your story is a really good one to, like, ways that you can raise your kids to build healthy systems, to build healthy microbiomes from birth. Like that conversation, that education. And I mean, we didn't even get into like maternal care and like
literally
what happens in the delivery room. Like that.
Episiotomies are so barbaric.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like episiotomy, hysterectomy, these things can have a purpose, but as the go-to thing, like cut, remove, medicate, cut, remove, medicate. Okay. Like, how is that healing? Like, how is that? It's all frequency, and that comes from the frequency of I need to get this out.
I
because
feel like
you're bad.
Like it's going more for volume instead of actually healing. Like how many people can I fix in a day? So let me make sure that I do I know this will work. These things we may have to try a few different options, but I know this one will work. It's the most severe, But if I don't want to have this person back in here next week complaining again to me about the same
and
thing.
legal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's legal, like hospital, like there's a whole world of what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you have. My friend who's the doctor who herself uses all Eastern medicine. She's like,
The
I'm
more she learned about it.
Yeah, but she's like, and I'm legally bound by Kaiser. Like I work for Kaiser. I have to prescribe these things. Like
Yeah.
I can't not prescribe a certain drug, even if she doesn't believe in it, which is so
Weird.
challenging. Yeah, like
It's weird.
I can't imagine in my profession like going into work and not being able to do what I truly believe helps
People.
the patient. Yeah, like that would be really hard. And I think doctors' mental health is also a problem for that reason.
There's no way you can see that much death and just be okay with it. Like, even just take away the physical thing of like someone dying. Like, yes, that's traumatic, but imagine feeling the way that you feel at a funeral every day, like grieving people around you all the time. You have to numb. So I understand how the lack of compassion starts to factor in with both doctors, police officers, any type of job where you are essentially being traumatized every day. You're going to start to shut down. But it's being a person, like a real human being, and going home and realizing like, I'm numb right now. This isn't good. It may hurt to feel, but if it's really getting to the point where it hurts you so much to feel, you probably shouldn't be doing that thing. And that's when I start to argue, like, I feel like Eastern medicine practitioners are more so for the betterment of human beings, whereas usually when you hear someone that's a doctor, it comes from some type of God complex place, which not all of them. This is not a generalization. All doctors are bad. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying that doctors save lives every single day.
Yeah.
But there is a certain type of person that's going to look for alternative medication, and a certain person that's going to be okay with prescribing something that their boss told them that they had to do. And that's just the separation that it comes to. Not everyone would go live in India for 5 years and really figure out like what is happening in my body. And I think that's where people don't want to do the hard work, and they don't want to do something that they don't know is 100% going to work, or they want a quick fix. And they're catering to something that we are doing. It's not like no one's asking for pharmaceutical drugs and no one wants this quick fix, and they're just like pushing it on us. You're sitting there and taking it and not asking any questions about this bottle that has 1,800 side effects on it for the one thing that you have an issue with. And then, oh, I'm having this problem. Oh, well, here's a different thing. Now you're taking two things, and this thing is the thing to help you with your original thing, and then this thing's to help you take that thing, and then you have another thing because this took away your appetite, so you need to take this too, and now your pee's weird, so now you're taking, like, it just builds and builds, and they're not losing anything by filling your body with poison, essentially. They're gaining. So if you really care about your health, whether you're a man or a woman, you really need to sit with yourself and think like, am I living the healthiest lifestyle? If I change certain things about my lifestyle, will that change my physical health? It may not. But I think it's at least worth trying rather than
cause
just
and effect
chemicals.
Yeah, I mean, it's like health is not complicated. It's actually like pretty basic, like sleep, food, going to the bathroom, good relationships, getting sunlight, fitness. Like, it's not complex. Like, we all know the basics of what makes you feel good, and what makes you feel good leads to being healthy long term. It's really basic. It's like, but it's so hard for people to do because we live in a society that is chronically unhealthy, and people don't sleep, and the stress levels. But one thing I want to, just to your point, what you're bringing forth is the difference between like a masculine mindset and a feminine mindset. Like, the feminine, or the divine feminine, is very process oriented. It's like very much things take time, like be in the work and look at yourself.
Compound effect.
Yeah, like be patient. What is the divine mother? What is the archetype of mother? Not biological, but just general. Compassion, love, like openness. The masculine's like, get this done. we need to achieve X by this time. And that is needed in certain aspects of society. And we all have both. But I think when you talk about health, the body is part of the earth. The earth is part of Mother Energy, Mother Earth. So if we treat the body, which is a part of Mother Earth, with this very masculine force, goal-oriented focus, eventually it's just not gonna blend.
Yeah.
The body is processed. The body is subtle. It's energetic. It's like it's constantly in process and change. It doesn't really respond to like this thing now at all. And so I think it's interesting. Like acupuncture is so interesting to me. Like even as a provider, and I see a lot of people, like I don't know how it works. It's very subtle, but I see huge, particularly with women, like huge changes very quickly. And especially like the better I get at it. And I think it's teaching me so much that the body is, and you'll talk to doctors about this too, they'll say the same thing. It's very mysterious. It is that like dark, feminine, unknown, the yin energy, the earth energy, the masculine's like light. I know what's going on. The God complex, like the God up here. And so we can't really treat the body without this paradigm of the earth and earth medicine and food. Like it doesn't make any sense.
That's why it's so confusing to me that medicine has gone so far away from the earth.
Well, it's money. Like it's money.
But it's like
control, power, money.
Yeah.
Like that's where, but I think there's definitely space for integration. I think integrative medicine is the future where, you have.
It was created for a reason. Western medicine wasn't created for no reason.
No, and there's so much benefit. There's so much that can be used in a good way. It's just about creating an integrative approach, which is completely possible. And COVID, I think, showed that our system is super broken, our medical system. So hopefully that has now given some space for some new ways of thinking. I think so. I mean, I look at my own practice and, how open-minded I see people from all facets of life. And people are really open, or opening. But again, we're in LA. So
that's the thing is like I've only lived in New York and LA my whole life. So I've always been in very like open-minded places. I've never been in a place where it's like you're shunned for doing yoga or thinking this way, or like everyone bullies you because you're a vegan. Like I've never been in that situation. It's always been very just like you do your own thing. And like as long as it's working for you, like it's working for you, and you'll find your tribe and type situation. So my heart definitely goes out to the people who, like, I've traveled to the Midwest where the only option is ranch dressing. Yeah. Ranch dressing is the dressing. That's what do you mean? Do you have another option? Do you have we have some oil? You want oil? Like canola oil. Okay, yeah. Give me canola oil for my salad. But like it's just very apparent that America's huge. America's extremely big, and there are countries that if you took a plane like you take from New York to LA, you've gone to over 2 different countries and you're in a whole new different people speak a whole new language where you just landed. And
it's like that here.
When you're trying to create food and medical supplies and all these things for so many people, there's just a certain type of quantity over quality that starts to come to the surface. And it's really going to take you as a person sitting down, because no one's going to care about your health like you. That's why you have these people that come up with cures for things that never had cures because they had it or their kid had it. And you care about something way more when you have a personal attachment to it. Care about your health the way you care about your bank account, the way you care about that new car, the way you care about your car's oil running because you got a Ferrari and you wanted one your whole life and you would never put low grade gas in your Ferrari and blah blah blah. I've seen people like treat their things that they acquired that they can buy another one of better than they treat their physical selves that you can't replace. That these are your only teeth. Yeah, you can get veneers, but these are the only teeth. Like these are your eyes. Yeah. This is it. Like this is the body you were given. So anything that you are going to spend extra time or energy or money on should be the thing that is irreplaceable to you. You can't replace these things. It's like your body and like love. Like those are the things you can't buy.
Yeah, and your mind. Like taking care of your mental health, taking care of the thoughts every day. Like I'm such an advocate of daily practice, of investigating the quality and nature of your perspective on life, how you think about things. Become critically thoughtful, like question society, question the modern paradigm, question the beliefs that you may have held since you were a child, and particularly question the beliefs that are about self. This idea of I don't matter.
Yeah.
That's a very common, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. Like that's a very common belief. It's set from early childhood. Question that. Like, is that true? And then the actions stem from the belief. So the seed is what you think your worth is. If you think you're worthless, you're going to treat yourself that way, and you're going to treat your car like it's $1 million because you don't matter, but that thing matters. So like, it's really a question. And this goes back to where we started the conversation of like, if you really deeply value yourself, self-care will be automatic. You don't even need to like go to a yoga class and like do all the fancy things. That doesn't matter. Like
you can do yoga in your room.
Yeah, like you can breathe, you
Literally.
can move, you can dance, you can eat, buy food from the produce section. Like there's so many ways to care for self that are simple. Again, like we have been human beings way before Western medicine, In-N-Out, and McDonald's.
Literally,
like we've
all
been
of it.
eating.
We've eaten for a long time. We've survived. We're here. So
yeah. So I think like just kind of coming full circle, like the bottom line that I am just constantly hammering in my clients is like, are you loving self every day? Like, are you talking to yourself like you're a bad kid that needs to be punished? Is that your self-talk? Like, think about that, and what does that then do to your health? Like, what are the choices that you're consequently making? Do you think that you can't work out because you're not good? Like, I have people, they don't think they're good looking enough to go to the gym. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is crazy. Like,
literally
what?
the society that we live in.
Yeah, like, I'm not fit because I don't go to the gym, but I'm not fit enough to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Put some shoes on and run.
Yeah. I'm like, just forget what people think. Like, forget about it because everyone's fucked up.
Everyone has an opinion. Two things that like really helped me was everyone has an opinion, first of all.
Yeah.
And second of all, this way that you're concerned about other people's concern for you is the same way that they're concerned about everyone else's concern for them. Like 9 times out of 10, that person that you think is like thinking about you and staring at you right now is spaced out in their head, thinking about like, oh my God, I didn't even want to be here today. This is so uncomfortable. Like, I don't even know anyone here. And you're thinking that they're like, ew, she's here. Like, no one, you're the main character in your own life, and truly no one cares. 4 Agreements, one of my favorite books. Don't take anything personally. Take nothing personally. Literally, everyone is going through their own shit every day. Everyone is struggling with their own things, just like you are, and no one is immune to the struggle. So just be kind to each other. And if someone's being not kind, just remove yourself from the situation, because any engagement that you have with that is just going to lower your vibrational energy and put you in the negative where they are.
Yeah, the vibrational energy. And I think, like, in closing, like the body responds to frequencies and energies. So food has energy, thoughts have energy, obviously other people in our environment have energy, have vibrations. So what we choose to put in our body will change how our cells vibrate. What we choose to put in our minds and cultivate and think about changes our frequency. And if you want to attract positivity, like attracts like. So it makes sense to put things in our bodies, to do things, to think things, to bring people in our world who vibrate at a high frequency, because like attracts like. So if we put crap in our bodies, negative, hateful thoughts, that's what we're going to attract. And I think to be advocates for our own health, it's really understanding that you are the creator and like that's empowering, and it's also super scary. And that's where like finding support and like finding women, finding men who are doing this work to help be a guide. Like I would not be where I am today without like the plethora of teachers that took me by the hand and like really believed that the source of truth and love and healing is within. And then ultimately over years and years and years, I kind of started to believe it. And now I vibrate at that frequency and I'm able to offer that to others. And so I think we really all are capable of that, and find help, like ask for help, find people, find healers, find guides, find teachers who are doing the work themselves. And it's like, we're just all one, like we're all in this
Literally
journey together. So yeah.
What is a step that the lovely people can take if they want to start connecting with self more, like a daily practice that you would suggest just to get into even just audition yourself with starting to get to know yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, because imagine you're trying to build a relationship with another person. You have to spend time with them.
Yep.
So similarly, if you want to get to know yourself, you have to spend quality time alone with self. That means spending at least 20 minutes without distractions. So no phone, no kids, no partner, just you. And I usually suggest 3 things. So one is a text. So you mentioned the 4 agreements. That's an excellent option. Pretty much any book, like it can be anything, and there's so many options, but anything that vibrates at a high frequency, that's talking about universal truth, that's talking about universal love, and this is ideally a practice done first thing in the morning, right when you wake up. So a book, so reading something, it can be just a paragraph about love or about healing and growth, what we're talking about, so that you start to flush. It's almost like, I think of it like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. That kind of literature, it's like a flush of all the negative, egocentric crap that we're constantly populating. Like reading a book like 4 Agreements, it's like, whew, okay, love, healing, like all good. And then journaling. So 10 minutes of just letting your own soul speak. And then movement. So I'm really glad you mentioned this, particularly for women. A practice that's been so key for me is a free flow movement. So I usually end my morning practice where I like go on my hands and knees, I listen to music, closing my eyes, and I just kind of like move my body. So that combination of like reading a little bit, it doesn't need to be long. Like you can read for 5 minutes. It's super profound. Just flush it out, write a poem, free write, whatever, doesn't matter. And then some form of movement. And for some people, meditation works. And particularly, I think for more masculine energy people, that can be men, that can be masculine energy women. But like that seated meditation can be really helpful. I find for feminine essence women, more helpful is the movement practice, because we just like, it's just hard. And we end up being like 3-year-olds in a straitjacket.
Literally.
And it's like, it doesn't help things. So it's a combination of, education, expression through your words and writing, and then bringing in the body. And that every day can be extremely transformative. And you don't need to worry then about what happens externally, because when we cultivate the health within, naturally you'll vibrate at a higher frequency. And you'll start to attract higher level thinking, higher level people. And trust me, like as soon as you make the decision to grow and be healthy, the universe will support you.
100%.
Like there's no worries about that.
Also, if you guys are looking for some books to read, if you go to teawithtori.com, all my guests that I have on here let me know their favorite books that changed their life. So you can go look at those and pick whichever one resonates with you the most. But thank you so much for giving me your time
My
and
pleasure.
Coming here and speaking about this. I feel like just women talking about women's health is such a situation that is needed in life right now. So I'm so grateful for you for coming and sharing this space and being so vocal about everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. Please let the spillers know where they can find you online, if there's anything you're promoting right now, if there's anything basically that you'd like to let them know.
Yeah, so you can find me. Natalie Vitality is my Instagram, and my website, natalievitality.co. My in-person practice is in Los Angeles. I have a practice at Innate Love Wellness, and I also have a private practice. And I'm starting a new brand with a group of women healers called the Way Yin. And we're going to be doing retreats that are basically consciousness expansion retreats. And we're going to include microdosing and sound healing, as well as deep dives into your limiting beliefs through workshopping, through journaling. We're going to be at our first event, we're going to have a pool, and we're going to be doing some cranial sacral release to paired work to help people release trauma through the body through creating a paired healing space. Our first event is going to be August 20th in Hollywood at a venue called The Lair, and we're limiting it. It's application only. We really want to invite people. It's open to men and women, but we want to invite people, and I was going to share with you the application when we launch it. People who are dedicated to this path, who want to release. The two other facilitators are both amazing women and healers. And so our mission is really that healing is consciousness work. And so we're going to work on trauma release, limiting beliefs, and then we have a sound bath, meditation, and yoga, and all these things. So that's happening. Our first launch is August 20th, The Way Yin, which I'm super excited about. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. As per usual, I'm Tori 212 Green on all platforms. Tea with Tori podcast on Instagram. If you would love to see Natalie's Q&A, you can go to the teawithtorypodcast.com, and I will talk to you guys next Wednesday. See ya.